mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episodes 5 and 6 of Amazon Prime's Outer Range, entitled The Soil and the Family, respectively. There's a lot to like in these two episodes, and I'm not going to spend too much time with these like overall thoughts because there's so much to cover, but there's a lot to like, particularly on the character development side of things. There were 3 moments specifically that I'm going to cite when I'm talking about these 2 episodes that I thought were really good character moments, but there's only 2 episodes left in this season. I'm becoming frustrated with how we continue to pile on questions and give very few answers. If this were a 10-episode season, I'd probably be thinking like, okay, we're 6 episodes in, we have 4 left, now we got to start answering questions. With this only being an 8-episode season, I believe, we haven't moved far enough into bringing some clarity into what exactly is going on with only 2 episodes left. Even with the supernatural aspect of the show, the stuff with the Tillersons and the land and all that kind of stuff, even that has moved at just a tortoise pace. That we're 6 hours into this show, and we're not really any farther along with the whole Wayne wanting to buy Abbott's land thing. So like the stuff that I think we need to know, we're getting very, very little of, and we're getting a whole lot more questions that in some way provide some clarity and answers, but there's no balance here, and we're like way heavier on the question side than we are on the answer side. And with only 2 seconds, with only 2 episodes left, that's not a lot of time for me to be sitting here on episode 6 with like 3 moments where I was like, what the fuck is this that's going on right now? And it's in the sense of like, I understood what I was seeing, but I was like, how is this even playing into, it's just another situation of like, what's going on here? And I'm going to talk about one of those situations specifically, but the way I want to do this show, which is how I've done it so far, I believe, when you're watching 2 episodes at one time and then coming here to talk about 2 episodes at one time, rather than breaking it down like, here's what happened in 5, here's what happened in 6, I'm going to break it down from a character perspective. Like, here's what happened with Royal, here's what happened with the Tillersons, here's what happened with Sheriff Joy, here's what happened with the Abbotts, here's what happened with Autumn. So that's how I'm going to break this down. So there's a lot to cover here, so I'm going to kind of try to speed through this, but I'll linger on certain parts that I feel were important to these 2 episodes. So Royal wakes up after being knocked out by Wayne at the end of episode 4, and he takes the necklace that he won from Autumn to a geologist. And when this happened, I thought, oh, this is a great idea, because my thought was his purpose was to take it to have her examine the rock and the necklace. But it seemed like the purpose was actually just to ask her if Wayne had been there, because she says that, Wayne was here 6 weeks ago. He wanted somebody to come out and check out the land that he was going to be getting, which we know is from his perspective, the west pasture of Abbott's land. And then she's like, so is there anything else you wanted to ask me? I'm like, that's what he went there for? Like, I thought he was going there for the necklace. Like that. And I put in my notes like, oh, this is brilliant. Yeah, take the necklace to a geologist. And then it seems like kind of like offhand, he's like, yeah, I also have this necklace with this really important rock. And she clearly is way more interested in this rock than she lets on. And she says that it's the outside of it is amber, and it's protecting whatever is encased inside it. And she says that they have the tools to be able to figure out what that is. And just as seemingly Royal might be about to hand over the rock, he sees a picture of her on the wall in front of a BY9 sign, which we remember from the end of episode 1, where he kind of jumped to the future and everyone was there with, a bunch of scientists and stuff like that. BY9 was there. He sees that, knows that, these probably people that are going to come from our land to analyze everything that's going on here. And he says, fuck that. And he takes the rock and leaves. Let's see. He goes home. He cracks the rock open in a vise, and he gets like the same soot on his hands that we see in another part of the episode that Wayne gets on his hands. I think that's the beginning of episode 5, but I'll get to that when I get to the Tillerson's part. And once this soot is on his hands, they kind of start to morph a little bit. And he sees what we can assume is the future. He sees himself presumably dead, laying on the ground in Cecilia's lap. And then he sees Autumn there, dressed like a gym teacher, wearing the necklace. So like, I don't know what this is, because it can't be the future because he broke the necklace. Is this a new necklace? I doubt that too. I feel like this is like an alternate timeline. But he sees Autumn there with this yellow gym teacher shirt on, and I say a gym teacher because like she had on like this button down shirt, which we never see Autumn wear, and then the necklace around her looked like a fucking whistle and shit. But more on that later, because we're gonna talk about Autumn's appearance a little bit more later. So later, Royal runs into Autumn at the Void, and he offers her a ride back to her camp. And he really just uses this to scare her. He like just driving real fast on this ATV, and she's freaking out. And she jumps off and hurts her leg. And they get into this argument where he tells her he broke the necklace and nothing happened, which was a lie. And then she kind of like says everything, like the rock is connected to the Void, and that's connected to time, and you traveled through time, and you're pretending like it didn't happen. And he's totally in denial. And he says his family wouldn't understand. And he tells her that if she comes there, his family's going to kill her. And then he goes and burns down her camp. Later, in what I think is it's the first I'm going to talk about. I don't know how it happened chronologically. But in the first good character moment, he goes to find Cecilia. And he finds her holed up in this shed, which we know he doesn't know. She's in there with this dead bear that she found outside of their house. And she doesn't want him to come in. She wants to be alone. And he tells this story about how they went on some trip. She had a map. She was saying like, you ain't going the right ways. Like, typical man shit. I got it. Don't worry about it. And they got lost because essentially he didn't listen to her. If he had listened to her and she had the map, she had the directions, they wouldn't have got lost. And he says that eventually she got them back to where they needed to go. And he tells this whole story, and then he closes with the line, I'd be lost without you. And I thought that was a line where I was like, all right, even I'd take him back at this point. That was a beautiful line, but I thought that was a great character moment for Royal, who has been, up to this point, completely secretive, holding all his emotions in, being very short with everyone, being very curt, and for him to tell that whole story and end it with "I'd be lost without you" is like, oh man, that was some brilliant shit. Like, you can't help but go back to him after that. And the last we see, well, not the last we see of him, but later we do see that she has returned home. So moving on to talking about Autumn. In these 2 episodes, essentially, she just escalated the beef with Royal to an insane degree. She sneaks in his house to find the necklace. Cecilia gets her the fuck up out of there with a gun. And yes, granted, Cecilia left the door cracked, but I don't know what this is with people. And I see it on TV all the time. And I don't know, maybe it's a thing in the white community, and that's why I'm not familiar with it. But you don't just walk up in people's houses in the black community. Like, I'm like, oh, I knocked and no one answered and the door was open, so I just invited myself in. That's a good way to get shot. Like, what? Like, the entitlement to think that because the door is unlocked that you can invite yourself in. That's not a thing in the black community. So I don't know why she thought that was a viable response to being found upstairs in someone's house. Like, oh, the door was open and I knocked. So, I mean, what else you want me to do? Not walk in my fucking house. That's what I want you to do. But, oh, God, that just irritates me. Every time I see that in television or film, it pisses me off. But she leaves and she points out that Royal, she's asked, like, has Royal been acting strange? Which we know that Cecilia does know that Royal has been acting strange. And that kind of, you could tell that kind of fucks with Cecilia a little bit. So after she leaves, she waits outside of a bar to wait for Royal to potentially confront him about the necklace again. And Perry shows up, and instead of, hanging out waiting for Royal, they go to some weird rock, like death metal kind of bar where they're jumping around and pushing people and shit. And they have a conversation where she asks Perry about Rebecca, and he tells her this story of the last time he saw Rebecca, that Rebecca wanted to move. They fought about it. And after this fight, he went to bed. He woke up. She wasn't there. And that was the last time he saw her. And he's like, maybe she left. Maybe she, maybe she left because she didn't want to be with me, or maybe she left and then was like abducted or whatever. He doesn't know. But I thought that was a good character moment for Perry as well. The second, I said 3. That's actually the second out of 4. My mistake. Later, we see Autumn come across a bear, which I'm only assuming is probably the parent of the smaller bear that Cecilia finds, which we'll talk about when I start talking about the Abbotts. But this scene was weird. And this was like the big what the fuck kind of scene for me, because I believe I heard that if you come across a bear, you're supposed to make yourself big and like scream at it and yell and try to intimidate the bear. she does the exact opposite and like lays down on the ground and curls up in the fetal position. I'm like, did she not see the Revenant? But anyway, the bear comes up and is like sniffing her, licks her, or whatever. She turns on her over on her back for whatever reason, and then says the word yellow, and then we hear what did it say? Show him, which is like I think we're supposed to take that like the bear is telepathically telling her show him, which she does by continuing to escalate this beef. She does go and find. Well, she doesn't go and find Billy, but she comes across Billy and she shows Billy the void. I thought that the scene where she's walking him to the void was really just unnecessary. Like she's telling this story about like an astronomer and they're like coloring the shot weird where it's like it looks kind of black and white, but they're like in a faint kind of red color. And that just felt like let's do some shit just to do it. And like, that kind of bothered me. But anyway, since Royal burnt her camp, she no longer has her meds. I'm not going to try to remember what the name of it was because I didn't write it in my notes. But you guys, I talked about the meds last week. And I said that I looked it up and it was medication for bipolar. And now that she doesn't have her meds, she's like really like freaking out. She carves the symbol that she was drawn to that we saw on the side of the mountain. She carves it into her chest with a knife. She then later meets with Perry and is just like full blown manic, saying Royal tried to kill her, saying that she thinks Royal killed Trevor because she saw him dump the body, which is true, and that she's going to go basically tell the police about it. Perry says he's going to take care of it. And then the last we see Autumn, she finds Billy in her motel room. And she mentions something about she says it's time, which at first I thought it meant like it's time for them to do something. But I think she's saying that the void symbolizes time. Like it's time. It's all of time. And she like makes it kind of like the idea like it's a physical presence, which I think was a conversation she had with Royal. And then she says, like, every day a pattern gets clear and the pattern is moving toward her. So things seem to be escalating with her and Billy. I'm going to talk a little bit about that when I talk about the Tillersons next, but not too much to talk about there. The Tillersons didn't have too much going on, but I think that her and Billy might be aligning against Royal. So we'll see. As far as the Tillersons go, Wayne returns after knocking out Royal at the end of episode 4, and he's holding a piece of the rock in his hand, his rock. And again, that same soot is on his hand that we saw in Royal's hand, and he has a vision. But his vision kind of seems to be more of the past than the future. We see like a kid crawling out of the void. And I'm wondering if that kid is Royal, because didn't Royal say that he doesn't remember the first 9 years of his life? That was Royal, right? So I don't know. I wonder if he had some sort of experience with the void as well. But why Wayne would see Royal's past, again, another question. So I don't know what he saw, but whatever it is that Wayne saw, he then had a stroke afterward. Later on, his ex, Patricia, has a great scene where she lays a guilt trip on Cecilia for essentially coming to her house with this church group when she's covering up a murder. And you could tell that really resonates with Cecilia. And I'm going to close out by talking about Cecilia and the Abbott family and what happened with them. We see Billy sing again, which, as you guys know, I'm fully fucking fed up with that. But shoehorning in a Noah Reed solo into every episode is the most obnoxious fucking thing happening on this show. It's shameless fucking like let's just. Like I said last week, if you had a character on the show who was a figure skater, but she's on a ranch, you're going to find a way to make her figure skate every fucking episode? Like, that's what this singing feels like. I hope they find a way to make it relevant within the story. Like, this is somehow a way that connects him and Wayne. But I'll get to that in a moment as well. Wayne, we see a flashback where Wayne tells Billy that if anything happened to him, he would want vengeance. And I wonder if that means that Wayne is going to die from whatever it is that he suffered from, even though it kind of seemed like he was coming back to life after Billy took the rock from his hand. But the only reason I think that is because, we talk about the idea that Wayne would want revenge or vengeance if something were to happen to him. And he says this to Billy, and Billy also finds out that, he finds out about the void, so now he understands the West Pasture. And then we also find out that Wayne has left everything to Billy in his will. So if Wayne dies, Billy's going to have all of the power And he's also going to have the desire because he understands the importance of the West pasture now. So it just makes me wonder if Wayne is going to die and Billy's going to kind of take over. And that's why I said it's interesting that Autumn might be aligning herself with Billy, because if Billy ends up in a situation where he's in charge of the Tillerson Ranch, he has the desire and ability to go after the West pasture, and he has Autumn, things could go bad for Royal, but we'll see. And then there could be a hiccup in all that, because we see in one brief scene the Frito-eating county assessor crashes his car trying to avoid that same bison, the one that had the arrows in it, that was standing in the middle of the street. He swerves to avoid it and presumably crashes. We don't see what happens, but I think that whether he's hurt, whether he's dead, whatever may happen, I think that will at the very least delay this hearing, if not somehow manage to make the hearing not even happen. Moving on to Sheriff Joy, there's a dishwasher at the bar that fingers Perry for the fight with Trevor Tillerson, and then the guy specifically says that Rhett was not involved, and I think that's interesting as well. She tells in great character moment number 3, she tells this story to one of her deputies about how she avoided being raped by the relatives of one of her friends because she listened to her intuition. She said, if I get in this car, something bad's going to happen. She doesn't get in the car. She does get chased down, but she doesn't end up raped. And she says that she was okay because she listened to her intuition. And she doesn't fully form the thought, which I thought was a great piece of writing. But she essentially says that my intuition is now telling me that Perry is behind this. And she says, Perry is behind it out loud. And she later tries to get what I believe is like an arrest warrant. And the holdup here is the fact that the coroner told her that Trevor only died 8 hours before being found. And she just says the coroner is wrong. But how do you sell that to a jury? Hey, Perry did all these things. He was behind it. The coroner's like, oh, he only died 8 hours ago. And they fought 4 days prior to that, or 3 days prior to that. That you can't, it's a waste of time. There's nothing you can say if the beef happened 4 days prior to his body being found, and the coroner's like, the body was only dead for 8 hours. They're not going to be like, oh, the coroner must be wrong and the sheriff must be right with her theory, with no evidence. But we'll see how that plays out. But I thought that was a great character moment for her to have that intuition. I listened to my intuition before, and I'm going to listen to it now. Later, she has a terrible incident at church where they're taking communion, and this priest refers to her partner as her friend, and then pointlessly talks about how marriage should be between a man and a woman. That was really shitty. And then later her partner is pissed off because she's like, I don't want to be humiliated for you to further your campaign. But Sheriff Joy is causing problems. She pulls up at the end of the episode, presumably to arrest Perry. She's on to everything. She's doing great detective work. I mean, I'm not saying they got to throw her in the hole, but if they do, I'd understand. I don't know what you do about her. She's really on her shit. And then lastly, briefly talk about the Abbotts. Cecilia spends the majority of these 2 episodes at a real personal conflict regarding how she's kind of protected her family and covered up Trevor's murder, and that's conflicting with her deeply religious side. She gets prayed over at this Bible club meeting. After she discovers this dead baby bear, instead of burying it, she starts to bury it, and then she pulls into this shed or cabin or whatever, and she puts her hand in its mouth and has it pressed down hard enough to where it bites her and pierces her skin, which I can only take as her way of trying to reconcile punishment over what she's done, or at least what she's been complicit in. You have that moral crisis that you're doing the wrong thing, but the only way, she's not going to turn in her family, so the only way she can punish herself or make or kind of just even things out karma-wise would be to punish herself physically. So she has this bear bite down on her hand, and I thought that was another great character moment. I feel like great character moment number 4 was all of Cecilia in these 2 episodes. They did a great job of conveying her moral conundrum. So I thought that was really great stuff that they did with Cecilia. And then what I don't like about this, and I'm really fed up with this, is Rhett sees Maria at the bar, and they toast, and they rent a room in Pound Town, and they do what they gotta do. I'm over the Rhett Maria relationship. I am not at all invested in this. The only reason I even will give a smidgen of a fuck about the Rhett Maria relationship is that I like the fact that it goes to show how much Rhett has sacrificed. He sacrificed a happy life with this woman he wants to be with in order to protect his family, which is what makes it that much worse that Perry confesses. Because then it's like Rhett did all that for nothing. So Rhett's anger is justifiable in that moment, but then he goes too far by saying that, Perry being the way he is what drove Rebecca off, and that he's the reason why Amy doesn't have a mother. Like, that was a low blow. So they fight. And then after they fight, Perry pulls back, he picks up a knife, and he's like, you want to stab me with it, go ahead. And he's like, I did it to protect Dad because Autumn was going to snitch. And then Roy was like, wait, what? Autumn going to do what? And he says he told them to stay away from her. And then he starts to fight with Perry, slams him into a wall, and like glass breaks. The glass cuts Amy across the forehead. She runs out, and we see the police coming to arrest Perry. And that's essentially what happened in these 2 episodes. So like I said, I really like the character moments that we got in these episodes. I really like, what was the other thing? I can't remember the other thing. But I don't like the fact that it, again, just more questions. Like, what is the significance of yellow? Just the whole scene with talking to the bear was just weird. There's a whole lot of weird for the sake of weird. Like I said, that the way that the walk with Autumn and Billy was shot, the walk to the void, that was weird. But like I said, they're doing a lot of interesting stuff with, I like everything they're doing with Sheriff Joy. I am intrigued by what's going to happen with the void. I'm sorry, with the rock that's in the necklace, and both Wayne's visions and Abbott's visions, how those things are going to actually play out. But I don't know if we're going to get that this season. A lot relies on these final 2 episodes. Are they going to answer a lot of questions and leave just a bit enough intrigue for a second season like Severance did? Severance did a phenomenal job with answering just enough to leave you satisfied and leaving just enough for to make you want a season 2. They need to do that here, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done in these final 2 episodes, and I think these final 2 episodes are going to determine how successful, at least in my mind, and who gives a fuck what I think, but at least in my mind, how successful this first season is. And maybe I don't know if it's planned for multiple seasons, if it's meant to just be this one, I don't know. But I think these final 2 episodes are going to make a big difference in how this show is looked at in retrospect and whether or not it'll get another season. So at 22 minutes, that's perfect. I will wrap this up, and I will see you guys next week for the final 2 episodes of season 1. And until then, peace.